probably will not be able to. Regretfully, we will probably not be able to take any questions during the Q&A from the public, just PCAC members, because we have two very important speakers, and there's going to be a lot to be discussed today. At this time, we don't have a quorum as of yet, so we're going to defer the approval of the agenda and the minutes. And I'm also going to defer my chair's report because we have Mr. Court, who's available right now to speak to us. So our first speaker is the presentation by MTA Inspector General Daniel Court, Outreach and Oversight, and he's going to give us a little insight on his first year as the Inspector General. Mr. Court, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Thank you, members of the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee, for giving me the opportunity to speak here today. And thank you, Lisa Daglin, for inviting me. I'm sure you're all eager to discuss yesterday's developments related to congestion pricing, so I appreciate you still giving me this time to talk about the work of the Inspector General's office. While OIG had no role in the implementation of that program, it is certainly something we have monitored closely and expected to potentially examine after it had gone into effect. I have long appreciated your advocacy on behalf of the riding public, which was once again on display yesterday, both on the streets and on social media, and I believe there is a lot we can learn from each other as we collectively aim to improve our transportation system. I'm a regular attendee of MTA board meetings, and it is always a highlight to hear what's on Lisa Daglin's mind during the public comment sessions. It's always good to hear such informed passion on behalf of the system's riders. Just a little about myself. I was appointed MTA Inspector General in June 2023, just a little under a year ago, coming over from the New York City Department of Investigation, or DOI, where I served as First Deputy Commissioner and at one point Acting Commissioner. I have previously worked as a prosecutor in the New York State Attorney General's office and at the Manhattan District Attorney's office. Throughout my career, and really my entire life, I have been a rider and a big fan of the New York area's vast public transportation system. I grew up riding the number 7 train and taking the Q60 green bus into Manhattan from Woodside, Queens. I've seen a lot of things, good and bad, over the years, and know all too well that the system is not perfect. But I can also confidently say it's not broken either. My opinion on that has only been strengthened during my first year as the MTA IG, in particular by my time in the field touring MTA facilities and meeting many of the proud workers who keep the system running. I want to share with you some of those experiences and also discuss the important recent work of our audit, investigative, and legal teams, especially the matters that most directly impact the riding public. As you know, my office has oversight of the MTA and its various entities and contractors. With a $20 billion operating budget plus the capital budget and a workforce of 70,000, that can feel like a monumental task. But I wanted to build upon the success of my predecessors, most recently Elizabeth Keating, our head of audit, who expertly served as acting MTA IG for 2 years after the very accomplished IG Carolyn Picorni departed for the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District. At the same time, I also wanted to try some novel approaches to the job. At DOI, we met with the heads of many city agencies, visiting their offices and getting a sense of the enormity of the tasks that they had. I found that to be enlightening. On top of that, I noticed how our visits were generally appreciated. We were no longer the boogeymen who were just out to get them, trying to catch them in misdeeds or mistakes. Rather, we were just fellow city officials like them, trying to do our job with a genuine interest in their work. That stuck with me as I transitioned to MTA oversight. I knew that I needed to get out in the field early and often. I needed to understand the complexities of the various agencies and their facilities, and I wanted the visits to humanize my office. If the MTA workers could find my staff and me trustworthy, they would be more likely to report improper conduct or other issues. They might say to themselves, My coworker is cheating on his time card or secretly working a second job, or I see a situation that could put riders at risk. That OIG guy seemed to care, so I will let him know. To make that happen, I first needed buy-in from my staff, and I got it right away. There was never any hesitation. The investigative and audit sides of the House were immediately on board, pun intended, with the plan, and the investigators worked out a schedule to start what they dubbed as a Hearts and Minds tour, which I intend to continue into my second year on the job. One example I can give is the MTA's bus depots. You always hear about bus depots, but what does that really mean? What goes on inside these massive buildings? So I went to one and I learned what a complicated choreography it takes just to move the buses in and out and to keep them functioning every day. It helped me to see firsthand what these workers are dealing with. On other visits to other MTA facilities, I met union officials, shop stewards, and workers at all levels. I asked them, how can I help you? I just want to learn more about what you do and tell you about what I do. I find that when I ask people questions about their jobs, they tend to relax. They're proud of what they do, and it puts them at ease when they see that I am genuinely interested in learning about how they perform their jobs or work in their crafts. One bus depot worker and I got into a conversation about sleeping problems, which of course could lead to safety concerns. When we each spoke about our sleep issues, I ran into him again some months later at a meeting at another bus depot. He had actually gotten a promotion. Because he and I had earlier developed a rapport, I think he was comfortable giving candid answers at what was more of a later investigatory meeting. Visits like that give me a better understanding when an investigation arises. I can picture the job locations in my mind, and I have some understanding of how the workers do their jobs. For example, I might get a complaint about employees who use their idle time to run errands, work secret second jobs, or just go home. Obviously, none of that is okay, and those actions will never be tolerated. But because I have visited a variety of depots, yards, and shops, I have a better idea of the structural and managerial problems that might allow these things to happen. We also traveled to bus depots in response to incidents that received news coverage. My team and I went out to the Kingsbridge depot after reports about a bus tire dropping into a second floor pothole where it could be seen from the level below. Frank Anacaro, the senior vice president of buses, met us there with several other MTA officials, and we were shown where the incident happened, and we talked about their plans to address the issue. It was good to see that even under challenging circumstances, our relationship with the MTA can be cordial and constructive. But they had some tough questions to answer, including why there are structural issues with the building that is only 30 years old, and how they will remedy the problems without disrupting service. Similarly, I visited the East New York complex following reports of fire safety concerns and overtime costs sparked by a broken sprinkler pipe and failed water pressure tests. We were shown the areas of interest, which included walking over a rickety wood plank to look down at the pipe that had burst. While we were out at the complex, we had the opportunity to tour the citywide bus command center. It was fascinating to see, and it was truly the only way to understand the monumental effort it takes to orchestrate a 5-borough bus network. A month later, this past April, I had the chance to see the Operations Control Center for the New York City subway system in Midtown. Demetrius Critchlow, who was about to step in as the interim head of the New York City Transit, led our IG group around the impressive facility and showed us its inner workings. It takes a small army to keep the trains moving safely and efficiently, and there is zero margin for error. It was a very different perspective of the subways than the one I had in October when I participated in the subway track training. Following a few hours of intense classroom instruction at a former public school in Gravesend, Brooklyn, our appropriately stern instructors escorted us to a station in Sunset Park and led us down the ladder at the end of the platform and onto the rail bed. From there, we walk north on the southbound tracks, always walk against subway traffic and remain aware, and eventually tucked into our assigned nooks or niches, as they call them. Nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. A towering, I see a number of nods because a number of us have had track training. A towering local train passed inches from my face while at the same time an express train rumbled by just as close behind. That humbling experience gave me a tiny glimpse of the dangers track workers and contractors face every day. You also come to understand how physically taxing that work is. I was in heavy work boots wearing all this gear, and you have to step only in certain places and avoid the ominous third rail. I went home that day and was physically and mentally exhausted. And I remember taking a nice long nap. Now I know I've spoken only about the New York City transit facilities so far, but I've also spent a lot of time learning about and visiting sites that are crucial to the commuter railroads. Recently, I had the chance to meet with Metro North Chief Security Officer Michael Matz and his team at Grand Central Terminal. He gave us a detailed look at the proactive and reactive measures they take to secure hundreds of miles of track across 2 states. He also showed us some of the anti-terror detection systems at Grand Central and gave us a unique perspective from the glass-floored catwalks 4 stories above the main floor. I've also been on several other MNR site visits and out to Long Island Railroad facilities, where my experiences were similar to those at New York City Transit in terms of workers, by and large, appreciating the interest in their work and the detailed questions I had concerning what they do every day. I found it all fascinating to see. There are places at MNR where they manufacture some of their own parts, sometimes even for other MTA agencies like bridges and tunnels, using sophisticated computer-driven heavy machinery. I also went out to B&T's facility on Randall's Island for a security briefing. Collectively, this time in the field as part of my office's Hearts and Minds tour has been an invaluable tool for my introduction as Inspector General, and I can only benefit from continuing to make these visits for as long as I serve in this role. Let me transition now to our ongoing and recent work. Even though I can't share specific details, I can tell you that we have 2 active audits related to subway rider and worker safety that we hope to make public later this year. These both address system-wide concerns and will include critical recommendations to New York City Transit. I can share details with you about a report we issued yesterday on major fire safety lapses by an MTA contractor at a New York City Transit building in Brooklyn at 130 Livingston Street. The timing of our issuance of that report was somewhat unfortunate. I saw that it got no coverage, but our audit team learned that the contractor had rewired or entirely removed fire safety devices while performing extensive renovations, and the contractor left the system shut off without notifying the building or the MTA. The MTA's construction and development team that was supposed to provide oversight for this contractor did not adequately do so, which the MTA acknowledged in response to our report. All 4 of our recommendations related to this report have been implemented by the MTA. We released 3 audits related to the oversight of driving behavior at the 2 railroads and New York City Transit, including excessive idling and harsh braking and accelerating earlier this year. These agencies now have the necessary technologies to keep track of how their highway fleet vehicles are being driven, and they have each accepted our recommendations for better utilizing that system. We have been pleased with some of the progress, particularly at Metro North, but all of the agencies have a long way to go. The reason we care is productivity, accountability, and safety. It is an issue we regularly examine every few years, and we will check back again soon. A final item worth noting is that our office continues to keep tabs on major MTA projects around the system, including, if you can believe it, still ongoing Superstorm Sandy repairs, We're also tracking progress on the large-scale Park Avenue Viaduct replacement, and we had been closely monitoring the next phase of Second Avenue construction. I think I've spoken enough, and I hope you found this helpful and informative. I'll turn it back to the chair and would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, I thank you, sir. Not a question, more of a, oh, it's kind of a question comment. When you were mentioning Livingston Street and the fire suppression situation, I believe you were able to recover money from the contractor for money that was expended for fire watches
Yes,
due to their negligence?
yes. We recovered a little over $30,000 because there was an unnecessary fire watch. A fire watch is when there are people, MTA or contractors, employees who actually are there on site 24 hours during the period of time when the sprinkler or the fire alarm system is not working to make sure that no fire occurs. And that's required by the fire code in the fire department.
Okay, greatly appreciated. All right, so we'll take some questions. Yes, sir.
I'm Christopher D. Greif as New York City Transit Riders Council, and I do have a question as I'm also an ACT member for accessibility. In your, a lot of things I've been reading on your report, and I was reading some now. What is more updates you've been seeing more on accessibility
Um,
on the railroad as well?
we have not issued a report recently about accessibility. I know that it's a very important issue. It's something that we're constantly thinking about. And one of the things that we need to do is to find an angle, because, for example, and I know this is slightly off the topic of your question, but for derailments, we know that there have been series of derailments, but we're not the subject matter experts on derailments, so we need to find an angle to look at. And I think what you've raised in terms of accessibility is an important issue, and we're constantly looking in that to see whether the MTA is spending its money efficiently, where it needs to perhaps spend more money, and that is an area that I'm going to bring back and ask my audit team to consider. But thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Okay, I believe Andrew has a question.
Yeah, hi, thank you so much. The contractor that you referred to about 130 Livingston, is he a contractor for any other MTA facilities?
I don't know off the top of my head. I think he may be, and I think that one of the but I don't want to. I think that the contractor may be. I know that the MTA, that we made the MTA aware of issues, and I believe that the MTA has instituted some corrective action on that as part of the report.
For all the places that he's?
Yes.
Yes, terrific, thank you.
Okay, do we have any other? Bert?
Hi, I'm Burton Strauss. I'm Vice Chairman of the New York City Transit Riders Council. This is on a little bit larger scale. As was brought out to me today in reference to yesterday's decision by someone who was not pro or con the whole situation. The MTA has a reported number of dollars that go into overtime. I think they run into federal deficit numbers. Are you doing something that we can talk about in terms of trying to control this vast dollar expenditure?
Yeah, there's nothing I can say publicly at this time. As you might imagine, I'm not really at liberty to speak about any kind of audits that we may be doing or that we may not be doing. But overtime is definitely something that we have issued reports on and that we are continuing to look at, that we are very concerned about. And it's one of the things that is of concern at the bus depots, because there's the East New York bus depot. There's a lot of overtime, a tremendous amount of overtime that's being expended as a result of fire watch there. And that's something that we're quite concerned about. And I know the MTA is also concerned about that as well, but that is something that we continue to look at, but thank you for that. And I appreciate that.
Okay, do we have any other questions around the room? No? All right. Oh,
Well, thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
all righty. We still don't have a quorum at this time, so we'll hold off on the agenda in the meeting minutes.
Oh, they can't count, of course.
Right.
Right.
Right, so I will do a quick Long Island Railroad Community Council's chair report. I will defer any of the PCAC issues to Lisa when she does her executive director's report, because as you all know, a lot has happened in the last 24 hours and Lisa's and her staff has been on top of it. So they'll be able to give us the latest. Regarding the Long Island Railroad, for June, the Long Island Railroad has been reporting some of the best non-COVID years, on-time performances in their history, often north of 95% the last few months. However, it should be noted that due to the fact that we lost firm connections at Jamaica after the opening of Grand Central Madison, these statistics, as good as they are, do not necessarily reflect the customer experience. The schedule is so tight in Jamaica that trains can be considered on time, yet miss the connector in Jamaica. We will continue to fight for the restoration of firm connections instead of the current transfer opportunities. Speaking of Grand Central Madison, it took a little over a year, but the split of westbound commuters between Grand Central Madison and Penn Station is now at the originally projected 40%, 60%. Ridership numbers continue to increase, but due to shifting work patterns, we still have time before we get back to the pre-COVID levels during rush hour. As you can probably imagine, the Tuesday, Thursday ridership has been percentage points better than the Monday and Friday. Off-peak ridership has returned to pre-COVID levels and in some cases exceeds 2019 numbers. Accessibility projects on the Babylon branch are moving along nicely. A couple of weeks ago, I had the privilege of attending the ribbon cutting of the new elevator at the Copeg train station. And it was recently brought to our attention by a commuter that the late train link was not functioning properly, and the PCAC office is working with the Long Island Railroad and MTAIT to get this problem resolved. And that's it for this month for Long Island Railroad. If anybody has any questions. Yeah.
Just to make note that the Long Island Railroad ADA Task Force members were there. I wasn't, but the rest of the members were there and attending at that press conference, the Babylon branch, Copay, I think it was.
Yeah.
Just want to be clear for the record, because they have been acting, we're trying to keep that committee running very strongly to make sure that more accessibility is attending these.
They made it a point to get their picture taken with the, cutting the ribbon and all that. So
Yeah,
you were well represented there, even though I didn't mention it. Your organization was well represented at that event.
guilty as charged, because I know Akil's looking at me strange, but it's okay.
Yes, Stu.
Yeah, with the service plan now changed, what's your experience with trains to Brooklyn to Flatbush Avenue? Are we seeing that ridership has changed in any way, up or down?
Not to my knowledge, no. I think it's been stayed fairly consistent.
Stable?
Yeah.
Okay.
And,
Can I answer?
yeah, Lisa, go ahead.
We're still seeing, and when Kara and Jack do the social media reports, we still see concerns about the up and over and the short time periods from the transfer in Jamaica to Brooklyn, and that's something we're continuing to watch. And and the time change between or within the schedule, it's more like 30 minutes instead of 20 minutes. So we're continuing to watch that, although it's people seem to have adapted and adjusted well. I do want to add that LIRR had a press event in Patchogue with, Discover Long Island, with the ferries and the mayor of Patchogue, to announce their their getaways and all the different packages and events that they do, over the course of the summer, and also talked about the fare discounts and the fare promotions, that they're doing, for the summer. And I know that Metro North is doing those as well. So if anybody wants to take a trip, it's always good to look on their websites and see what they have to offer.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Any other questions?
Karen has a question.
Karen, yep.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good. So I noticed that every time there's a schedule change on the Long Island Railroad, then it affects where the trains are coming in. And to what Lisa was saying, that she still hears complaints about transferring. So, for example, if normally the train comes in on track 2, suddenly it comes in on track 5, and then we still have to run over to track 1 or 2. So there's not that consistency of knowing where that train will come in so that you can better prepare. And I noticed also, if I get a train after 7:37 in the morning, that's Lawton going to Grand Central or Penn Station, when I get to Jamaica, I have to wait anywhere from 14 or 15 or more minutes for a connection. And so that means if I don't leave my house get on that 7:37 train, I won't get to work till after 9. And so I don't know if something can be done. And sometimes we're at the station pulling in, there's a train across the platform, but it won't wait for us. And we have to wait that 15, 14 plus minutes for another train. And the
Rob?
last point I want to make is that I know during the height of COVID, the trains were cleaned regularly, the seats were clean, everything. And now we come on and the seats are close to filthy. They're not wiping them. And then you even see stuff in like the creases of the seats. And so I was just curious as to, is it they don't have enough resource, like staff resources, money, time, to clean the trains, but they're not up to their previous standards. Thank you.
Okay, no, well, that's good to know. That's something we'll look into. I'll question Rob Free when I see him next at the board meeting later this month.
Thank you.
Karen, is that condition you just mentioned lines, branch specific, or is it on all variety of branches that you've used
It
it?
seems to be on multiple. I can't tell you I've written them all, but on, because I don't always go direct. Sometimes I get off. It could be on the Babylon, but it could be whatever train, and I get off at Jamaica, and I'm seeing it across several train lines.
Okay, thank you, Karen. We really appreciate that. Larry?
I've just got one thing that I think we have to also keep a tab on. The elevators, we're gonna talk about accessibility, Chris, so somebody else is gonna talk about it. Yeah. I'm on a cane. I had to transfer from track to track and the elevator was not working. I managed to go up and down a flight of stairs with no problem at Jamaica this morning. But there's other people that were on wheelchairs that were just sitting there trying to figure out what to do because there is only one elevator. Now, there's no plans of installing another set of elevators, but I think MTA's, I didn't see anybody working on the broken one. You know, or whoever it is on the elevators.
Yeah, one of the big problems we have there is that, believe it or not, they're not MTA elevators, they're Port Authority elevators. So we got to go through that, and Chris will tell you that's, it's an ongoing problem.
Yeah.
The Port Authority elevators, I have, as well as Jason Jason can't speak, but I can say that I have attended the Port Authority meetings and I have mentioned this to them that these elevators at Jamaica need to be fixed more. But we do need to work on, Jerry, the outreach for Long Island Cares thing that I have mentioned at the last LLR Community Council meeting, that we need to work on Long Island Cares up a little more at that station. There was some issues going on too.
Okay, yeah, great. Yeah, no, that's definitely a point to make, and maybe they can even make some announcements in the station about the Long Island Cares is available for, if necessary.
Right, but unfortunately in Jamaica, you got one elevator and if you you can't get onto the train, the end, it's over.
Well, some platforms, they do have freight elevators and they do try to cross them over there, but the only
Yeah.
platform that has one elevator is where the Brooklyn shuttle is.
Mhm.
And that's the one issue that's been going on for years.
You mean the new platform? I just want to remind everyone that we're only entertaining questions and comments from guests. And that if we have time at the end of the meeting, that we will, but we don't.
No, from PCAC.
I mean, I'm sorry,
members.
from PCAC members and not from guests. So I don't want you to lose feeling and blood in your supply in your arm because we're just not, if we have time at the end of the meeting, we'll come back to you. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and we do plan to resume at the next PCAC meeting, having public comments and questions. All right, do we have any other questions regarding the Long Island Railroad? Okay, seeing none, we'll go down to Andrew and New York Transit Riders Chairs report.
Okay. Obviously, a lot has happened. I'm not going to go into that. I'll just go into what I had been planning to talk about prior to the amazing news of Rich Davey leaving and congestion pricing being halted. Those were two real smacks in the face that we got recently, obviously. But on the issue of Omni, Omni is going to be made much more accessible in the year 2024. Many more Omni types of cards will be available, pre-tax, senior, fare Omni cards, and you're going to see it in a lot more stations. They're going to be installing vending machines for these cards. As far as integrating Omni with commuter rails, that has changed amazingly and will be available on the commuter rails a year earlier than had been originally forecasted because it will be incorporated into the Train Time app, which lots of commuter rail riders use and like. It's got a very high rating on the App Store. It will be part of Train Time, and you'll be able to use it as you would a regular hard Omni card, or you will also be able to use a credit, debit, or regular Omni card if that is your choice. Scheit and Bachman will be doing this integration. Cubic will not have anything to do with the commuter rail Omni conversion anymore. We are actually getting some money back from Cubic, and the project will get done a year earlier. So it's likely by the end of 2025, Omni should be everywhere, and really everywhere, except Path. Port Authority refuses to do that. They have their own system they're going to use, even though they've allowed it on the JFK Air train. They will not have it on Path. Maybe they can change their mind after a while, but on the issue of fare evasion, we are looking at new kinds of turnstiles because obviously the test ones aren't doing the job. Fare evasion continues to be rampant, and the estimated loss in 2024 could be approaching $800 million, and that's a lot of service that could be provided. So we need to stop this at the turnstiles. They're experimenting with this also a 15-second delay on the emergency gate. New Yorkers don't like to wait, so that is one deterrent to going through the emergency gates. And they are looking at other methods, and now they're even looking at behaviorists. They're going to try to, I guess, explain why this is a bad thing. Maybe they'll have celebrities telling you, don't beat the fare. This is what happens if you do that, and all of this sort of thing. They are hiring behaviorists to see why people are doing this. And it really is all walks of life now. Everybody is doing it. I cannot take a ride without seeing multiple incidents of fare evasion. So we need to get a handle on this. And obviously, the people, not everyone who beats the fare is committing a crime, except maybe theft of service, but the ones that are committing other kinds of crimes likely did not pay their fare. So if we can stop them at the turnstile, we've also helped the MTA's bottom line, helped people feel more comfortable. And the Scout program is continuing to enlist lots more, I don't want to call them volunteers, but patients. They are interviewing with a clinician with 2 MTA police officers, people that appear to be homeless, that are living in the system, that happen to be asleep on a bench or in a corner on a platform. And they're talking to them and they're finding out if they are okay, if they need any kind of mental assistance. And if so, they are taking them to the proper place for that. And they are following up to see how they made out, which the BRC did not do when they rounded folks up after midnight on many lines. So I have actually seen fewer homeless folks on the trains. I did just report one in a station, but I think I think this new plan, the Scout program, seems to be working. And I'll end it there, Jerry.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Andrew? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to Randy. Randy, Metro North.
Hi. Yes, good afternoon. Well, one of the things is that the chairman kept talking about 99% on-time performance for Metro North last month, so 99%. Thankfully, there hasn't been any major issues going on since we met. One of the major things was the completion of the work at the Croton Harmon shops, which was really a work in progress, took many, many years, but they have now a 21st or 22nd century facility, which MNRCC has visited in recent years. My report is here, so I know we have a tight schedule, so if there's any questions, it's all in here if you could read that.
Okay, do we have any questions for Randy? Any? Alrighty, well, seeing it's 20 minutes before Mr. Schwartz arrives, we can go right down to Executive Director's report for Lisa. Yeah.
All right, well, this has been a very long week. First, I want to introduce Brian Fritsch, who's been here for, it's been a month, but it feels like quite a year since you started a month ago. Welcome, Brian. You want to say a couple words about yourself?
Sure. I think I've had the pleasure of meeting most of you already at one of the Writer Council or meetings that have happened so far. But I'm Brian Fritsch. Took over as Associate Director just over a month ago. Came from across the street at Regional Plan Association, where I spent 3 years as Manager of Advocacy Campaigns, working on the Gateway Program, Penn Station, and a number of other RPA initiatives, and then 2 years as plus as RPA's Communications Director. Prior to RPA, I had a number of roles on political campaigns, both locally here around New York and around the country on congressional races, et cetera. I also worked to help establish the pre-K program in a role at the New York City Department of Education, doing outreach and enrollment, as well as working on some other coalitions statewide around New York State. So I have experience both here in the city and in Albany, and I've really been excited to dive right in on a number of pretty important issues here at the MTA over the past month. And thanks so much for welcoming me. And I look forward to continuing to make progress on everything that we have going on. So thank you.
Thank you. We are absolutely delighted that Brian has joined us in the month/year that Brian has been here. We have successfully not only produced a report, but had a press conference and gotten successful movement on our Fair Fares initiative. So on Tuesday, two days ago, that was Tuesday, right? On Tuesday, we had a press conference with the city council speaker calling on them to move forward with 200% eligibility for fair fares for subways and buses. You know, you all know that we've been advocating for that to expand fair fares to commuter rails as well. But we know that if it doesn't happen to 200, it doesn't move to 200% of the federal poverty level, it really doesn't make a difference because it's not going to move the needle for people. So we had a great turnout with electeds. We had a great turnout with advocates. And the mayor actually said that it's something he was going to work with the council on. So that was the news we went to bed with. And then the news we went to wake up with is something that, you know, Sam's going to go into more detail on, more history and detail on, but on the on defunding congestion pricing, which means essentially defunding the MTA's capital program and defunding all the work that we have collectively done for so many years. I know Scott and some others take some issue with the language, but the bottom line is there's no real plan B for how the $15 billion is going to come through. There is at 2 o'clock today a rally in Albany That's why Jack is not here. Jack, we put Jack in his nice PCAC outfit on a train this morning to go up and represent, speak with elected officials, advocate for, ensuring that the capital plan continues to be funded, that riders' needs continue to be met, that, this hole in the budget be filled, and to really express concern that, that a payroll mobility tax is not the answer. So, there's, there are a lot of moving parts that are still happening. There's a lot of anger in the advocacy community, and I believe probably in this building too. We're the ones who can say it loudly, um, and consistently and proudly, and we're going to continue to do that until we figure out what's happening. The board will meet in this room in 2, 3 weeks. We can have in a few weeks. And I think that we're all sort of on the 26th. Thank you. 24th for the committees, on the 26th for the board. The board is the one that approved the congestion pricing tolling plan. The board is the one, from everything we understand, that would have to say no to the congestion pricing tolling plan. So there is a big question of whether the board will be asked to rescind that vote, to take a different vote, and how that would work as fiduciary, in their fiduciary role as stewards of the MTA. Of course, our members do not have a vote. They would if we had our way, if the legislation that we've been advocating for had been passed. That we do not foresee that happening unless people recognize that, oh gee, maybe that's a good idea. And that is something that makes it into the big ugly and the PMT doesn't. Hey, you never know. It's been a crazy mixed up altogether meatballs from heaven week. So we are, continuing to unravel things as they happen. But there's a lot of moving parts. It seems every hour we know something more than we did an hour before. And then sometimes we unknow that the next hour. But there are a lot of people who are really firmly fighting for riders and rider rights and rider needs and the economy of the region, because that's really what this hinges on so much. Transit is the stepping stone, the economic engine, but it's really the supporting stonework of our regional economy. And without it, and with it crumbling stonework, we all stand to fail. So whether you support congestion pricing or not, we cannot go back to the summer of hell. We'll just have, a 12 months of hell all year. And those years will continue, be Groundhog Day for decades. So there's no going back to those days. I think too many of us lived through them. And it's interesting times, which is, as many of you know, is not a blessing. So we'll see. We'll continue to keep you informed. We will, hopefully Sam is going to come with a request for how y'all can help. We will come to you with requests for how y'all can help. And we are, so that's kind of taken up a large part of our time. What else? What have I missed? Oh, the FAIRS Act. Yeah, so there are 3 major priorities going into the last 3 years this month, were, it seems like, were ensuring that seniors could ride in the morning. Seniors, disabled, and Medicare eligible riders are able to ride in the AM peak on the commuter rails. That city ticket, weekly or monthly, whichever it is now with the Omni announcement, or the train time / Omni announcement being made, that is still something that we're hoping will be able to include a transfer to subways and buses so that people can really commute better, and that eventually that fares at 200% comes to commuter rails. So those are continuing. Those are not legislative. Those are fair policy. And so as the legislative session winds down or does it, we're continuing to work on those. So we've been busy, and that's why we are thrilled to have an amazing team holding down the fort. And with that, I will take any questions from our members. Christopher.
As a person with a disability and as an advocate for over 30 years, when I had to hear this yesterday, got me extremely angry and very disappointed. And I know, Lisa, you and I were downstairs at the press conference, and you saw I was keeping my cool and act professional, which I am doing today, and trying to keep my claws in place. I'm very disappointed, and I want to say this on the record. I am very disappointed that it doesn't matter which politicians they are. I'm just very disappointed. We've been advocating all these years to get funding for accessibility for seniors and people with disabilities. And I don't want to forget disability veterans, because if Edith was alive right now, she would have been off the walls right now. She would be going raging, and forget it. Right next time, she'll be in the hospital sick. And I'm trying not to do that. But all these things we've been advocating, and I was at a fair yesterday. I had people who were happy about the congestion price because with the easy pass, reduced fare, they were understanding it. We were explaining this to them, helping them. And now we're hearing that the governor is postponing this. It's disturbing us. It upsets us. How can we advocate or trust any politician if they really don't hear from us? And I have encouraged every advocate to support congestion pricing still, and still advocate today, and all New Yorkers to still continue advocating. One thing that upsets me is other advocates got to remember, put your pride on the side. Let's work together and let's get accessibility in here. I want more accessibilities at trains, buses, the railroads, the kitchen sink. I am very upset, and that's why I have to add, because I'm ready to blow up my brains.
Well, please don't do that. I think that, we're.
I'm not. I'm just not
Okay.
using curse words for the record.
Thank you. You bring up a good point. We actually had some folks at the rally that we were at yesterday talking about the importance of the new rail cars to service reliability on the commuter rails, and how that this halt, delay, call it what you will, puts a halt/delay in being able to order new rail cars, much needed rail cars on Long Island Railroad and Metro North, and service improvements that will come with that, particularly improving signaling. And if anybody thinks that there is ever going to be electrification on the Port Jefferson branch with no congestion pricing, even the folks who are dead set against it, no. Karen.
So I was just curious, what's the precedence for this, a decision like this, something that had been approved and was set to start? Have we seen something like this happen before? And what does that mean for approvals going forward? I'm just curious about this setting a precedent that we don't want set.
Well, we've seen funding for the MTA be rescinded in foolhardy efforts to influence votes and voters. And that resulted in a $19 billion loss to the MTA. In terms of a last minute withdrawal of a program and the legal precedent, there are people with greater legal minds than mine who are looking at this. There are people who are considering a number of different options and alternatives. I don't even pretend to play a lawyer on TV, so I'm not going to make any guesses as to the legality of it. But there are still, from what we understand, steps that the MTA board needs to take and be involved in before there's any pencils down finality here. And and, you know, honestly, the legislature has a role to play. And that is why there is a show of force in Albany today.
Mhm.
And there will be one, from what I understand, tomorrow
Tomorrow.
as well.
Yes. Mhm. Okay, thank you so much.
Mike, you look like you have a thought bubble.
I didn't intend to speak, so it's going to be rocky as I start. Yeah, the one thing I guess I would encourage us to do is not not get over emotional about congestion pricing specifically. I think what yesterday does is it just brings the planning for the 2025-29 capital plan forward. Congestion pricing was a one and done financial resource. It was going to be exhausted in the 2020 to 2024 capital plan. There was going to be a hole and unmet needs in the next plan already. And we need to start realigning our thinking as to what gets included, what the top priorities are there, because even if we can convince congestion pricing go forward, and I clearly support it, there's going to be a time of scarcity coming in the future capital budgets, and we need to really make sure the MTA is prioritizing the projects that impact riders' lives and gets them done efficiently.
No, you're right about looking forward, but I think we also need to think about what is not going to get done. Um, you know, one of the components that we sort of we as transit advocates predominantly don't talk about first is the congestion and also the air quality impacts, and the environmental mitigations that were planned, money that was planned for the communities that would be affected. There's hundreds of millions of dollars that have already been expended and hundreds of millions of dollars that plan to be expended. So does that money get recouped? Does that money get reimbursed? Money that's already been used as, say, for the Second Avenue subway as part of a matching grant for a project that's going forward. What happens to that grant if the matching part can't be found? Or is that, you know, parceled off like, okay, we like that project, we don't like that? You know, is this a way to get votes for moving forward with the plan B, as it were? But what we won't see is a diminishment of traffic congestion, and we won't see better bus speeds, and we won't see faster emergency vehicles, and we won't see better air quality, and we won't see even any benefits to the drivers in the congestion zone, because people are just going to say, well, why should I change my habits? You know, if there was the Partnership for New York, Kathy Wild sat on the TMRB, and she talked this morning on New York One about uh, the amount of money that's already paid by businesses and by transit riders into the care and feeding of the system, and the small amount that's being paid for by the vehicle users on tolls. So my first thought was, oh, well, why don't we just like up the tolls, and why don't we just toll the East River bridges? And that's a perfect segue for Sam, because those are politics of 100 years in the making. So, yes, we need to think about what do we do now with this giant hole, and what are the priorities going forward. So, thank you. So, Sam, we're just talking about what do we do now, and hold on, Judy. And um, I mentioned that the tolling of the East River bridges, just as a, you know, since drivers pay so little, and if there's no congestion pricing, how do we reduce congestion? So, anyway, it is now your show. Thank you.
Okay, there we go. Um, Sam and I realize that we've known each other for over 50 years, long time. And he served the city of New York under 4 mayors. I had a whole introduction, but in the last 24 hours, I think you've all gotten to know him very well. The only thing I did is that he's also an old friend and colleague of Andrew's, and I was very happy to get 2 old friends together who had not seen each other for quite some time. So that was my mitzvah, and the other mitzvah is to bring an amazing person to you. And he got his name. I'll just tell you one thing because you know him a lot as Gridlock Sam. He got his name, Gridlock Sam, in 1980 when we had a huge transit strike. and he was preventing gridlock, and he came up with that term, and he's been blessed or cursed with it ever since. And but Sam was going to make a whole formal presentation about congestion pricing, which I had seen him make, and we renewed our old friendship at that. But things have changed a little, and as we rode up from the lobby, he said, "I think I'm going to do a different presentation." So that is what. So we don't need that anymore because.
No, I am going to show that.
Oh, you are going to show that? Okay, anyway, it is my pleasure, it is my honor to introduce Commissioner Sam Schwartz to all of you.
Okay, thank you, Trudy. Mr. Schwartz, you're on.
Okay, thank you, Trudy. And if I blink a little too much, you all look a little blurry because I just came from the eye doctor. My pupils are dilated. I'm not on drugs. So we'll take it from there. Yeah, things changed dramatically in 24 hours. And I did have a presentation in support of the MTA's plan. But the reality is the MTA's plan was not the best plan out there. And the MTA got beaten up in a lot of different places, from New Jersey to Queens to Nassau County, and even here in Manhattan. Years ago, we developed a plan, which I've learned after 50 years of working on various types of congestion pricing, that was ultimately endorsed by just about every media. And that included the New York Times to the New York Post. Fox 5 endorsed it and others. So I dusted it off bleary-eyed and got it over to Andrew just a few minutes ago, and I'm so glad you have it up. And is somebody going to control it? I don't know how to, is there a controller? Yes, so we can move forward to what the differences were in the plan and what I see as the deficiencies in what was the MTA's plan until yesterday, and how maybe this group can work on a plan that ultimately received the endorsement of the AAA that sued me when I was a city official and I tried to do a mini version of congestion pricing. The Truckers Association, which sued the MTA, also was an endorser of this plan. Some people in Eastern Queens, like the Wetburn brothers, I split the Wetburn brothers, one of them supported it. So, Lisa mentioned the East River Bridge tolls, which were tolled until July 11th, 1911, when Mayor William Gaynor, after an assassination attempt on his life, cut the tolls. I want the police to open a cold case file on that. So let's move forward to the details. I think, let me see which one. I haven't looked at this in a long time. These are the equity issues and, low income people. Drivers were contributing but get nothing in return. And that is absolutely true with the MTA's plan, other than some faster traffic. Manhattan, the richest area, pays the least but gets the most. And I heard this from the boroughs. The outer boroughs contribute the most, and that would be true. Transit deserts were not addressed, and there are a lot of unfair toll and fare collection policies today. Next. And New York City in crisis. This is the summer of hell in 2017 and 2018. Traffic speeds are as low as they've ever been. Traffic speeds, and I checked the first quarter of 2024, which is always the fastest quarter. Midtown is 5.2 miles an hour. When I was traffic commissioner, it was about 7 miles an hour. I know that's not breaking speed records, but nonetheless, we used to move a lot faster than that. The CBD is at 7.2 miles an hour, and that's the fastest quarter. Next slide. And how we got here, Mayor William Gaynor, I mentioned, removed the East River bridges. If you pay a toll today, it's a TBTA, MTA, bridges and tunnels. And then you have Governor Nelson Rockefeller, who began to take some of the revenue from the tolls and give it over to transit. And we've met the enemy, and he is us. Next. And this is just the toll booth that was there till 1911. In 2011, I recreated this exact toll booth and tried to collect dimes from automobiles, no horses passed by. So it was all dimes, and nobody paid me. Next. And these are the past failed attempts. Have we learned anything? And we're going to add to this 2024 Governor Hochul's failed plan. Next. Not yet. Okay. So let's revive it. I'm all for it. And what I did was I spent most of my time with the opponents to congestion pricing. And this is a vote by the city council to the Bloomberg plan. It's most of Staten Island, the outer parts of Brooklyn and Queens. No surprise, Manhattan was a supporter. So what did people in those areas want? Next slide, please. And this is working age poor. And I think Community Service Society did the best study on that. So I need not go over this. Next. Next. And why it failed, while it continues to fail, viewed as a tax. There's some sanctity of interborough travel where one city, no trust that dollars will go to transportation. And I know by bonding it, that's been solved. Little in it for cost-centric outer communities, and that is true. Boroughs pay the bulk, little burden on Manhattanites south of 86th Street, and then 60th Street, yes. And George Santayana's quote, which you're all familiar with. Next. And this is what I heard when I went out to the boroughs. And I remember going out to Tony Avila and David Weprin, the outer parts of Queens. And they said, you're collecting a ton of money from us on this bridge in our backyard, the Throgsneck Bridge. And you don't even give us transit across the bridge. An occasional bus goes across and that's it. So they had a point in that. And you'll see how the plan then deals with some of these things that were wrong. Next. And we have the most cockamamie traffic scheme in the world. We take people on highways built by Robert Moses, and then we put up a dollar sign just as they hit the East River. And what do? They hop off and take city streets. We encourage people to use city streets. You go on the LIE and you take it the entire way, and then at Van Dam Street, everybody's getting off to use the Queensboro Bridge, or take the GCP down Crescent Street, or take the BQE up to the Brooklyn Bridge as opposed to the Battery Tunnel, when there's plenty of capacity on those other facilities. So this makes no sense. So one thing is the status quo stinks. Next. And this you changed, the MTA changed by making the Staten Island Bridge two-way. This was done before that. Next. And if you pay, most pay a lot more money. If you don't pay at all, such as the people on the Manhattan Bridge where you have 4 subway tracks and you have to pay now $2.90. This is an old one. 7 traffic lanes, still $0 since 1911. And we've had a lot of fare increases since 2000. Next. And so what is the plan? We have the current dysfunctional pricing scheme. Next. And wipe the slate clean. What if we were sitting around this table now saying, what is fair? Should we charge people in the Rockaways? You'd probably say no. Or people from going from Queens to the Bronx, in which we offer no direct transit service, you'd say no to that. You would say the Central Business District. Next. A bus. Yeah, an occasional bus going across. I mean, heavy duty rail. Over 200 different transit options come into the CBD. I actually counted them. That's in my other presentation I had. So what this says is let's swap tolls. Costs going into the Central Business District, Manhattan south of 60th Street, charge a full toll. Right now it's, I think, $6.90 to come in on the Midtown Tunnel, and it's $15 to $13 on the Port Authority facilities. Charge the same amount every single entry point. None of this $5 credit, which was ridiculous. People from New Jersey had to pay $10 on top of their $15 during the rush hour. This says everybody is treated equally. And it also eliminates toll shopping. Just imagine if the MTA plan went ahead and you were in this area, you wouldn't go out the Battery Tunnel, which is the closest to you. You'd have to pay a toll. You'd go out the Brooklyn Bridge and you wouldn't get a credit if you did take the tunnel because you would have had it on the way in only. So this says lower the tolls everywhere else. Lower the tolls at the 3 Queens to Bronx crossings and on the Henry Hudson Bridge, any bridge that doesn't go to the CBD, lower the tolls. And this includes the Rockaway bridges, the Gil Hodges Bridge, the Cross Bay Boulevard Bridge, and the Verrazano Bridge. So you're giving something back to motorists and you're giving something back to the middle class and lower middle class that use these facilities more than they use the facilities that go into the CBD. Next. And the for hire surcharge, I agree with. I don't agree with the taxi surcharge. They've been suffering so much, but I don't think you have to change the for hire vehicle surcharge. Next. There's a parking tax rebate. You can go back one. And that is Manhattanites. If I park as a Manhattanite in a parking facility, I pay less tax than if a Brooklynite parked in that facility. That's silly, so it's not a lot of money, but we had it there. Next. And the bottom line, and here's a big difference, is 75% to transit and some of that money going to New Jersey. In the original thing that I showed here, we had about 75 million a year going to New Jersey, which was about some of the additional costs that they would pay for it. And some of this would go to roads and bridges. And this is what the truckers wanted. And this is one of the selling points. The bridges and tunnels, when the BQE is declared unsafe for large trucks, the trucks are going to suffer. There isn't a good revenue stream for our bridges, and our bridges are crumbling. I used to be in charge of the city's bridges many, many eons ago. Next. And just some benefits. Next. And so glad that Fair Fares happened. We work Community Service Society and others on that. Next. And this was the advisory panel. I was on the advisory panel, but the Traffic Mobility Review Board, I offered to speak to them a number of times and they never heard from me. They never asked me to come and speak to them. Next. Next. And yeah, next. And then the equity issue, which Community Service Society addressed very nicely. I have an updated bar chart showing the difference in the income levels of people who own cars versus people that don't own cars. So even if somebody would pay $3,000 to $4,000 a year for congestion pricing, the skew between incomes is still almost as great. Next. Next. And this, the Community Service Society, they've updated this, and now it's about a 50-to-1 ratio in which low-income people would benefit. Next. And other options, I know the governor said she's going to find other options. They all have the word tax in them. And I just don't see this legislature passing taxes in what is always an election year. This is an election year. Next year will be a mayoral election year. The year after that, I think it's gubernatorial election and senators and assembly people. Every year is an election year. So I don't see the governor picking this up. And then next year, there will be people running for mayor against congestion pricing should it get revived. So I call upon you, the Citizens Advisory Committee, to start the process. Revive a fair plan, not the plan the MTA had, a better plan. Again, endorsed by every single media, including some suburban newspapers that looked at this plan. I'll send you all those editorials I have to dig them up. I couldn't see very well. I think I spelled your name wrong, Andrew, because I just came from the eye doctor on it, so apologies for that. But I heard, the governor say this is not the right time. In the 1970s, when I worked on it, they said this was not the right time. We had a fuel crisis. In 1980s, they said wasn't the right time because the city was going broke. In the 2000s, it wasn't the right time because of the financial crisis. Then it wasn't the right time because of the pandemic. In my other presentation, I show you traffic volumes are at 102% of what they were pre-pandemic. They're higher than 2019. Truck volumes are 11% higher than 2019. Traffic speeds are as low as they can get. There are so few silver bullets. This is a rare silver bullet that deals both with congestion and improving transit. And by improving transit, it deals with congestion as well. I don't know if there's anything more on this. Next slide. Maybe it's a bunch of happy people. Oh, and then this is the governor, the former governor saying it. I still remember it was August 13th, 2017, when he came out with this. I remember the date because my granddaughter was being born that night. And I was watching my other granddaughter while my daughter was in the hospital. So I was thrilled when Andrew Cuomo backed it. He certainly doesn't back it now. Donald Trump doesn't back it. He said he would, somehow kill it if he came in. And now Kathy Hochul doesn't back it. And it's not the middle class that is being hurt, as Kathy Hochul would say. The only middle class that's able to drive in and pay those prices for parking are my colleagues, government workers who have placards, and they should be taxed for those placards. My colleagues. Thank you.
So, Andrew, if I may, just because we were talking about this and my phone has not stopped ringing, and I refer most things to Andrew or to Lisa. I think that they're more in a position to speak for us. But the one thing that you proposed, I believe it was back in 1980 or 81, and it was when Ed Koch was the mayor, the first congestion planning uh, plan that you proposed was with tax tolling all of the East River bridges, not just the ones that already have tolls and adjusting them. And that's, I think, Lisa, you said that when I was bringing Sam up, that was the question that had arisen also. So perhaps you could address that particular point about tolling all of the East River bridges at this
Right.
point.
Right. So there are 4 East River bridges, and in 1973, the plan we had included the Harlem River bridges. And we were designing the plazas for the Harlem River bridges and the East River bridges, and nothing could stop it but an act of Congress, and that's what stopped it. The 1980 post-transit strike said driver-only cars during the peak morning period, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., would have to use the 3 toll East River crossings, the RFK Bridge, the Midtown Tunnel, the Battery Tunnel, and they could use the East River bridges. Later plans included tolling the East River bridges, which, as I said, were tolled until 1911. The Bloomberg plan was not much different than the plan that you see, except I believe every entry would have been the same. I don't know what he was going to do with already tolled facilities. So the big differences of what I've proposed in the past and I propose now is every entry point is the same. You lower the tolls elsewhere because you're not offering great transit to those locations. Maybe the revenue will not be $1 billion a year. Maybe it'll be 500 million a year, but it's a lot better than nothing. And that's what we have at the moment. We have nothing, a promise of taxes, finding money in a closet somewhere. I don't know where the governor is going to find the money for this.
Okay, and then the other for our 3 board members, here, and Lisa, you may know about this too, but the other question that I have been asked in the last 24 hours, and even while I was waiting downstairs, is what, if any, power is the board going to have in either reversing or doing something about this sooner rather? Oh, well, maybe you want to say it again so that.
We are figuring that out. So the board has a fiduciary responsibility to keep the MTA's finances in good order. The Daily News had a very good editorial today on not abdicating from that responsibility, and how it might open itself to lawsuits if it did. From what we understand, the board must take action to undo what it has done. It is unclear if the board will do that. There are a lot of moving parts and a lot of days ahead, and it's unclear where the money's going to come from. There's, the only people who can print money are the federal government, and they haven't indicated that they're actually going to do that.
Well, the other thing is, as you may or may not know, today is any of those things
Yeah,
have to go through the legislature.
Yep.
And today is the last day that the legislature, I mean, it's all in timing or not timing,
Yep.
but the legislature this year's legislature goes out of business this year. But I was wondering if any of our board members, since we have 3 live board members here right now, would want to say anything more about the board, or you probably had conversations with some of them. I know David Jones has been, which is the Community Service Society, by the way, he sits on the MTA board also, besides the Community Service Society. So if any of our board members have any comment on that at all.
Well, right now, the legal team is investigating exactly what rights we have in that regard. Unfortunately, the 3 board members you see here are all non-voting board members. So even when that comes to a vote, all we can do is pass a comment prior to the vote, but that's about it. So let's see if the board does have the ability to go ahead with it despite the governor's objections. One thing we need to consider is that certain members of the board are the governor's representatives on the board. So we have people that I know that are governor's representatives that prior to this were very supportive and voted for at the last board meeting. Now the governor has said that she wants to put it on hold. I'm sure she's making phone calls to the people that she's appointed to the board saying, if it comes to a vote, you're going to vote no. Whether they will or they not, that's remains to be seen.
Fact is that the MTA does need the money for accessibility. It's a big topic, every meeting, every committee meeting, every board meeting. We constantly hear about this. So the money's got to come from somewhere.
I'll also say that it really highlights the importance of getting a vote for the rider representatives, because they are independent. Their job, their role is to represent the riders. And that is their focus. They're the only people who are required to ride transit. So, we'll see. We'll continue that fight too.
I'm glad you brought that up. That's why I was asking them to speak in sort of going around the track way to.
Yeah,
talk
I
about
don't
that.
need a requirement to tell me to ride transit. I love transit and ride it all the time, but I think I'm going to be communicating with some board members and see where everybody is at and see what the next steps are. Because this just can't stand the way it is. There is too many important projects that are now on hold. You heard Jamie Torres Springer, the head of MTA Construction and Development, a few months ago, listing all of the projects that were going to be held up. And obviously accessibility, making 95% of the 472 stations accessible by 2055. That alone takes billions of dollars. Where is that money coming from? And Sam, one of the things I wanted to ask you, your proposal up there, does that raise the approximate 1 billion a year that the now jettisoned congestion pricing plan would have raised, which allows the MTA to bond up to 15 billion towards the $55 billion capital plan?
Yeah, when we did the analysis, we used the balanced transportation analyzer by Charlie Komanoff.
Oh, yeah.
And that was roughly $1 billion. So I haven't run the numbers more recently with some of the other features that the plan had.
Okay, thanks.
You also have to remember that when you did your plan, physically, they were not able to toll the other East River crossings because there was physically no place to put a toll plaza. Now that there's Easy Pass, and now it's just a license plate reader and it's a thing on a pole, it's a lot easier to get something like that done, and that could be an adding of the revenue in a strong way.
Yeah, absolutely. I do have old plans of where the toll booths would have gone, but you're right. It would have been very awkward. I still have them if anybody is interested. I can't imagine.
Yeah, Chris?
Jared, first, I want to say it's good to see you again. It's been a long time.
Yes.
I said something earlier. Trudy wasn't in here and Trudy would have been almost fainting. A lot of our advocates right now, and yesterday as well, were supporting congestion pricing because the one thing they wanted was fully accessibility. And for me to say this today, I am not disappointed with you. I'm disappointed with our politicians. And I can say I'm disappointed because a lot of our stations right now are being built. Thank God they're still being built, but there's some are being on hold, as Andrew said. But right now, it has been like trying to get people to understand there is an accessibility category. There is ways of getting deals in there. And I already said this earlier where Q was here and he put the thumbs up. So don't worry, Trudy. He heard me saying it. So I got you back there. But let me get to serious points. A lot of stations on railroads and subways and buses, and I'm saying buses for a reason because we've been advocating for all these years. And I didn't mention Edith Prentice, who was a strong one. And right now, a lot of advocates know how upset I am because I am turning into Edith, and I didn't want to say the curse word, so I'm not doing that. But the bottom line is it upsets me that our governor is putting a postpone, which they know that we need the funding for accessible stations in all the New York regions from up north to the east to the west, any direction accessibility. I just hope this congestion pricing will understand that we need the funding and we need everyone to put support letters out there and let's keep our own pride on the side and let's work together. Thank you.
Agree completely.
So I just wanted to, Kara found this for me earlier. 9 Long Island Railroad stations and 39 subway stations in all 5 boroughs would become newly accessible with funding from congestion pricing. 26 subway stations and 2 Long Island Railroad Metro North stations will see elevator or escalator replacements with funding from congestion pricing. So the big question is, now what happens? Where's the money? Show me the money. There is no money.
Also, the big thing, and you know that this has been my baby for a long time, the Second Avenue subway. And having been involved with that a long time, not quite as far back when they started building it in the 30s, but I live I live right there on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. I can just tell you that since this was announced yesterday morning, both phones have been ringing off the hooks, my emails, my everything else. But a lot of it is about, and I don't know if we have an answer to that or when you make your calls to the board people, is what is happening now with the Second Avenue extension, at least up to 125th Street. And I don't know if we have an answer or if you have any idea what's going to happen, but that is something that we should find out also, because I think that there has been some preliminary work done from 96th Street up, but not that much. So if we can also try to find out, is everything halt or?
Trudy, the answer is nobody knows nothing.
Even
Honestly, nobody knows nothing.
That's what I tell everybody who's been
Yeah,
calling me
there's
on the
been-
phone,
there's-
and they say,
Except the
hey,
federal
you've been with
funds
the
and all that.
MTA for 50 years,
So,
don't you
hold
know?
on. Nobody knows nothing. There's $4.8 billion that's from congestion pricing, supposed to go to Second Avenue subway,
Yeah.
including money that's supposed to be a match for federal grant. And Now there's no match money.
Okay,
So
we don't have, okay,
nobody knows nothing.
nothing.
Well,
Okay.
one of the things we do know is that it must have been in the back of somebody's mind that something like this might happen. Because uh, there was no contracts let, and they said at our board meetings, they are not going to release only the necessary contracts until they were assured that congestion pricing was up and running, cars are going past those gantries and revenue started to come in. So for the Long Island Railroad, okay, we have about 100 of those old M3 cars that are well past their useful life. And that contract to get the M9As to replace them, that's not going to happen, or not going to happen right away, because that was money that was going to come from congestion pricing. So there's a lot of things that are going to fall by the wayside or get postponed, just like the governor's postponing this indefinitely. Some of these projects will get postponed indefinitely until we can find the resources to fund them.
And nothing gets cheaper the longer you wait.
That's true.
That's profound.
Do we have any other questions for Mr. Schwartz? Anybody out there? Right, Sam, I think we're good.
Okay,
Thank
thank you
you,
for
Sam.
inviting me.
God bless.
Very different meeting.
Alrighty, so that gets us down on the agenda to old business. Is there any old business that any of the PCAC members want to bring up? Okay, is there any new business that PCAC members want to bring up? Chris?
Yeah, on new business, when we do have our PCAC meetings, I know we're gonna be in this room, but you used, either way, can we have our nameplates back?
Yeah.
Because at least I know. Yeah. And the second one I just want to say is, thank you for the button. I want to keep that on the record. I said, I wanted, I know, I just want to say thank you. Good, I want the world to hear me.
What's that? We still don't have a quorum, so that we won't go back to approving the agenda or the minutes.
But Jerry, I had on a serious note, on new business. When we do have speakers coming for PCAC, or if I want to say thank you for letting us know ahead of time on the agenda, so at least we know what to be prepared for. So if something like comes up, we need to be alert on. I'd like to thank you guys, thank the PCAC staff, because at least we are prepared when we come up. We're sitting. I'm ready, and I'm looking at the agenda, and I want to be always prepared. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Is there anybody else that needs to bring up any new business? Okay,
Jerry, it's Maddie.
Hold on, Maddie, hold on. Okay, no other new business? Okay, we did state earlier that if we did have time, we would entertain some questions from the general public. Let Maddie go, and I think Mr. X also had one. So Maddie, you're up.
Thank you, Jerry. I'm terribly sorry about that interruption because I thought you would never get there. But anyway, well, I was a little shocked rather when I saw that Governor Hochul was gonna temporarily put the brakes on congested pricing. When I heard about it, I ran immediately to the PCAC website to get their opinion. But I'm getting these applause from Congressman Mike Lawler, Josh Gottheimer, Thomas H. Kane Jr., even my Congressman Anthony Diaz-Rosito for applauding the decision that congested pricing. I am a disability advocate as well, We need the funding that we need, not just in New York, but all over the country, as accessibility is a human right and not a privilege. We need to have people have, you guys should have voting powers as well, but you can't just cave to lobbyists and special interest groups represent those. So I'm always on your side, and God bless you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. X, you have a question?
Okay, Fantastic Four, particularly you, old business. I believe I mentioned this to you and the first keynote speaker, I know I didn't mention him, but remaining for you, Jerry. December 31, 2023. I stood online for many hours without a bathroom break before the ball dropped. January 1, 2024, headed for Atlanta Terminal. And I was told the bathrooms were closed and I had to head for Penn Station. Are you serious? I stood online for over 6 hours without a bathroom break. And you're telling me I can't use the bathroom at Atlanta Terminal, but I have to head to Penn Station.
Who told you this?
It was an MTA employee, could have been MTA or a PD employee. I just mentioned the dates.
Okay.
Okay, I don't appreciate that. Okay, if I want to travel this borough to watch the ball drop, that's my right. I know I have to sit online for many hours without a bathroom. I've done it many times. But for the powers that be to tell me at Atlanta Terminal Station the bathrooms are closed and I have at a Penn Station that's play the Sugarland Express and the French Connection, just to name a few, it's outrageous and disenfranchising. As you know, Atlanta Terminal Station is served by the Long Railroad at all times. So why not keep the bathrooms open 20, or at least all night on December 31 and January 1? There are still many people who travel to this borough to watch the ball drop. And after it drops, some of them get drunk, but I don't. Let's be considerate to everyone. Thank you.
We'll make a note. Yep.
Are we not new business? Done the new business? Can I mention new
Yeah.
business? Okay, new business. Congestion pricing shouldn't be about charging the drivers whatever amount you wish to charge them if they enter this borough below 60th Street. Rather than do that, why can't we have buses running between my borough, which is one or two forgotten boroughs, and Queens, without entering this one across the Throxland, Triborough, and Whitestone bridges? It can be done. And the buses I'm proposing 6 bus routes, and I feel the only railroad and subway train stations they should serve are those that are fully wheelchair accessible. So if they can't use an elevator at one station, they can use it at another. So it should originate in my borough, run to Queens, then run to Brooklyn. At HOV lanes, since you can't build the train lines, but you get the buses, you could add HOV lanes. And it's up to everyone to get on board. And if you don't want to get on board, if you don't want to get off like James Brown, then my suggestion is hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back no more like Ray Charles. It's that simple.
You do know the Q44 runs over the Whitestone.
I'm aware of that, but I'm saying we need more.
Yeah,
We only have 2 buses running the Whitestone Bridge, none run across the other bridges from my borough.
And we do have this conversation every month, and you know that we agree with you. And you know that we are all waiting for the Queens bus redesign plan to come out to see what is gonna be part of that.
The Bronx bus redesign, we advocated for exactly. what he said.
We talk about, we're not the ones that put the service in place.
I can give you my proposal.
You can give it to us all you like. We have David's as well. We have Mike Howard's. We have proposals. We make proposals. We are very good at making those proposals, but getting them put into place is another matter. So, but that doesn't mean we're gonna stop. It just means that we're gonna continue, because I know we've got another one. Yes.
Okay, yes, sir.
Can you push the mic button?
Just identify yourself for people.
Of course. My name is Nicholas Kane. I'm a Red Hook advocate for a bus to Manhattan. I'm not going on about that today. You all have your hands full, and I'm as disappointed as anybody here. I would ask, and I can probably look this up, how many board members did the governor appoint? Six. Thank you.
Six that are directly.
Yeah, ultimately, she appoints them all, but there's.
Oh, she does.
Yes.
She does. Okay, very briefly, I helped build a coalition in Red Hook of now 24 organizations, including CB6, including Red Hook West, Red Hook East, Red Hook Business Alliance, taking about 6 months of slow and steady oars. It takes sometimes an hour to get to Atlantic Avenue on the B61. Formerly, 10 years ago, it worked out pretty well, but to get to Borough Hall or to get any avenue to New York, if you're moving in that direction, is a parking lot. On the other side, talking about elevators, we have Smith Street, 9th Street, Smith Street. There's no elevator there. It's the highest point. There's no accessibility for anybody with mobility issues. The ferry is very civilized. It's wonderful. It's not dependable. And unfortunately, the houses at the campus, they don't use it. I'm not sure why. There's some distance between them. So we're looking for a bus to Manhattan. Congestion pricing was part of it. But because of the bus redesigns now, we think it's a good time to still look at it, or at least analyze and investigate whether it's worth a survey from MTA or worth running a couple of test buses, because there's a lot of excitement to be able to get to downtown Manhattan in 15 minutes, and also to have the Lower East Side come to us. My only other point I want to make is MTL decide what the best route is. We have a favorite. It's called the M9, and it runs up. It runs from the East 20s. It's a very short ride, which I know bus designers like. It goes from the East 20s down past all the medical centers on the east side, hits East Village, Lower East Side, Chinatown, and winds up ending below the government centers, about 2 blocks from, I think, from the tunnel. Let's add a loop. We've got a loop in design for Red Hook for that, and let's see if that works. Anyway, there's 24 organizations. We started a petition last week. We're at 500 now.
Which East River crossing are you suggesting this bus use?
I'm sorry, the one that's right in our neighborhood, the Hugh L. Carey. The Battery Tunnel.
Well, that sort of doesn't put you at the Lower East Side. It puts you on the Lower West Side. But
No. I'm talking about the M9, which I'm proposing a link to.
Right.
It's whatever the MTA decides. The M9 goes down from East 20s, down past all the medical centers, East Side, Lower East Side, East Village, and then ends down around the government center. That's anything that gets us across to downtown New York, connection or not, I think deserves to be looked at.
Got it.
Thank you.
Okay, who's that? Jason, okay, you're up.
Thank you, Jerry, and good afternoon, everyone. Going into new business, congestion pricing being halted is a huge mistake. And I totally agree with Christopher Greif, who is my brother in this battle, because what happened yesterday is a huge tragedy to every single advocacy group, including the disability advocacy group. Yesterday, I was in the rally in front of the governor's Midtown office. And I'm going to repeat what I said yesterday. We need to call every single elected official in the state senate, in the assembly, every House representative, every Senate. This is where the election is around the corner. Even we need to call the NIMBYs across the Hudson. Because this is very important to us. Congestion pricing needs to go into effect right now. Because we cannot let our projects to be on hold. Because if it gets into on hold, traffic jams will continue and it will get much worse than it is right now.
Thank
Okay,
you, David.
Jason, but
I think
you're
you're
preaching,
preaching.
preaching to the choir.
Just gonna say that. David,
So
you've
it's
got
up
your
to
hand
us
up.
to continue the battle that is not done yet.
All right.
We understand.
I think David's got his hand up and I think he's the last person who hasn't commented unless there's any other members. And then after David, then we could probably, unless a member, because Mr. X, we've heard from you. I think we could then take a motion to adjourn.
All right, well,
So
let's
David?
let's see what David's got.
Yeah.
David?
Hi. I am have long supported a bus route. Well, I should say I recently have supported a bus route like the MTA's proposed B27, which is proposed to run between Red Hook and Vinegar Hill. I think that it should run via the Manhattan Bridge. And I have said to the planners before about during the outreach. The Hugh Carey Tunnel, on the other hand, my concern is if there's an accident in the tunnel. How are buses supposed to get through? That's my concern. Thank you.
All righty, so everybody's had the opportunity to ask a question. Motion to adjourn,
Second.
Rand, second. All in favor? Aye, we're adjourned.
Have a safe summer, everybody. Nice hat,
Yep.
Chris.
September 12th is the next PCAC meeting.